Hi, I'm here today with Mary from Mary's Nest, and I am so excited because I've actually been following her for years. So much so when her YouTube videos are playing in my house, my family recognizes her voice and knows exactly who I'm listening to. So I am so thrilled. This is the first time I'm like leading a interview kind of thing, but we're just going to have a back and forth conversation and share our knowledge, and just hopefully this will bless everybody that gets to watch this. So my name is Amy Cross from the Cross Legacy. I'll talk more about me later, but I am so excited to introduce you to Mary. Mary, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, Amy, and hello to all of your sweet friends here on the Cross Legacy. It's so nice to meet you, and thank you so much for having me visit with you today. And you gave me a lovely introduction. Yes, my name is Mary Schrader, and I have the YouTube channel Mary's Nest. And I teach all about traditional cooking, as I say, traditional cooking for the modern pioneer. Emphasis on modern. We're very happy we have indoor plumbing. But I teach how to make bone broth and ferments and sourdough. And basically, Amy, like what you and I have in common, how not to waste and make use of everything. And so I'm really looking forward to us chatting and sharing the different things that we do to keep food fresh and to store food and just to have a thrifty, efficient kitchen.
Absolutely. I've loved following you to make sure that the things that I've kind of grown up knowing, like making sauerkraut, that it was actually safe. And I can always trust that everything that you post are safe recipes
Oh,
and safe techniques. And I truly value that because there's so much other information on the internet that not always is safe. So I really appreciate that you always give us safe techniques to use to make food storage and healthy things for our family.
yes, it's funny. I have a funny story to tell you because what talking about food safety, especially with fermentation, I always tell people make a little investment in the pH strips. They're very affordable. You can usually get them at the pharmacy, or even if you have like a pharmacy right in your grocery store. And that way because viewers would write to me and they'd go, how do I know for sure that it's below this pH? And I'd say it's actually pretty easy to test, and then you can feel safe because people would say, "Oh, I don't want to make anybody sick." And oh gosh, I so understand that. I would never want to make anybody sick. And so I really put a lot of emphasis on that. I'm not a rebel fermenter or a rebel canner. I'm actually kind of afraid of those types of things because I do worry about food safety. And I'll tell you, it's funny. I grew up drinking raw milk. We really didn't, it was just milk. We didn't really think anything about it. You could probably can relate. And when I got married and my son was born, and when he was a little older and able to, drink cow's milk, raw cow's milk, I found a source for it here where I live in Texas. And it was so funny because I was a little nervous about it because, I mean, the dairy looked clean, everybody looked healthy, but, you don't know for sure. So I bring it home. I have a gallon. I think I bought 2 gallons. And over the course of a few days, I drank one entire gallon myself. And once I was still alive, I said, okay.
That it's safe to give to your your family.
And it's cute because my husband, he's not a raw milk person. I do try to get it's low temp pasteurized and unhomogenized, so he has to shake it for him. I feel at least, well, that's something. And my son likes different types of fermented foods, but when I started making kefir or kefir, depending on how people pronounce it, that's totally new to me. I didn't grow up with that. And when I was actually, this was so long ago, uh, maybe over 20 years ago or more, I was just chit chatting, and I think it was like on Yahoo that they didn't even have Facebook. And I had just got into this little group, and I was chit-chatting with this lady who lived up in New Mexico, and she said, "Oh, I have these grains. I'll send you some. Just send me an envelope with the postage." And I get an envelope in the mail with a little plastic bag with these grains in it, and I decide I'm going to culture these and make this thing kefir. And my husband is like, "You don't know this lady. What if it's poison?" And I've never seen, this was the book, there were no books or anything that
Right.
I knew of about this. And I culture it and I make kefir. And I say to my son, "Oh, you want to try some of this? They call it the champagne of milk." And he goes, "Oh, thank you, Mama, but I don't drink."
Oh, that's adorable. We're really lucky here. I grew up on a large farm. And when it was my dad's generation and my grandpa's generation, it was like a fifth generational farm. It was a dairy farm. So by the time I was growing up, they had retired out of it. But the milk that they delivered went to this dairy called Smith Brothers. And Smith Brothers still delivers milk to this day. Like even 100 years later, they just had their 100-year anniversary. So we just, within the last hour, I've had a milk delivery delivered here to my house. And
Oh
it's
my
just
God,
kind of
that's
fun.
heaven.
Yeah, so I don't have to. That's one of the reasons why I can spread out grocery shopping trips so long, because every other week we get milk delivered.
Oh, that is
But it's just
fantastic.
kind of a fun thing that people around the country don't think about. But everybody here in the Seattle area knows about Smith Brother delivery. But my grandparents were like one of the dairy farms that was part of that. And then my great grandfather, who was 104 when he passed away when I was born. But he is the one that had the patent for the milk canisters, the
Yes.
milk jugs that they used in World War II. And so my grandpa actually got to come home from World War II because it was so important for them to make these patented milk jugs. Because food security was so scarce at that time. So yeah, the whole like dairy farm and milk and the milk cans, like just it's history to me. It's part of our family. It's kind of fun.
It's your family history. That is so amazing, and it's interesting that you mentioned, about the food scarcity and the Depression, World War II. Uh, I always find it interesting because to me, when I was growing up, that didn't seem very far away. My parents lived through the Great Depression and they lived through World War II and the scarcity. And then my father was in the Korean War. And their attitude, my parents' attitude, my mother's 98. It's hard to believe. My dad lived into his 80s, but he's since passed. But my mom is still alive. But I was born in the 50s, in the mid 1950s. And my parents were always talking about the Great Depression and they were always talking about World War II. And their attitude was, it can come back. We have to be prepared. We can't just be sitting on our laurels, because the 1950s are good. And then it was funny when the 1970s hit, and then there was stagflation. And at that time, it was like high school and college for me. And it was funny because my mother would say, "See, I told you, these things can happen again." And, she's waiting in the gas lines and all of that. And so I suspect that both of us, and from what you have shared, on your YouTube channel, and also being a fifth generation dairy family, that you really understand uh, going through, your family history, going through the scarcity of food, and not just scarcity of food, but what's involved in raising and creating food.
Yeah,
Uh, the
it's an interesting thing because we were on, a farm, so we always had meat, we always had produce. Like I canned just like my grandma canned, all those kind of things. And looking back, like, so I'm a generation behind you. So looking back, I don't really remember my mom ever really stocking like flour or like stocking her like grocery store pantry items. Like, and it's not really something I kind of grew up thinking about. Like, yes, we preserve the harvest, and yes, we get, meat delivered once a year, and have a full freezer and a generator in case the power goes out. But that idea of like stocking butter or stocking, all those other items that you need to make the meal or make those items, that wasn't something that I was really raised doing. And we're an allergy family. And when the first beginning of the pandemic started, and all of a sudden we're soy, gluten, dairy, raw sugar cane. I'm a diabetic, and then we have one vegetarian in the family. So like when everybody's home, like we have a lot of things we're dealing with. And, all of a sudden I couldn't get gluten-free flour, and I couldn't get, things that I needed for when my daughters are home. And that was eye-opening, and it was scary. And for the first time, in my generation or the millennials generation, like they're really starting to understand that, yeah, at any second our store shelves could be empty, and, or we just can't get, like the allergy items that we need, or those random, items that you don't think about, that you just think that you can always go to the grocery store and get. And, all of those lessons of our grandparents, our great grandparents trying to instill in us, like came like rushing back. And now everybody realizes how important it is to have food security in your house, or like the rising prices of groceries, to even be able to afford being able to get the groceries that you need if they are at the grocery store. And, that's why some of my tips have just went viral, and it's been shared and spread so much. Like 5 years ago, one of my girlfriends, she was like, "Oh, Amy, you have to teach me about lettuce." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, I have to go get lettuce like every 3 days." And we can like literally see Costco from our neighborhood. Like we're so close to grocery stores. Like there's like a Costco, Target, Walmart, Fred Meyer's, like all within 2 stoplights of where our neighborhood is. And I'm like, "Well, that's great. You're eating salads. Like, you're having to go get lettuce, every couple days. That's great." And she's like, "No, it's going bad." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, we go to the same stores. Like, what do you mean it's going bad?" And she was like, "Well, the produce at the stores is just so bad, and it's going bad every couple days." And I'm like, "No, like my lettuce, like we use it and we have zero food waste. Like I don't get this." And I was I pulled this out a minute ago, but I keep lettuce, and I actually wouldn't even let my husband eat this last piece of lettuce because I wanted to show it to you. But this piece of lettuce, I broke it yesterday for a video, but it's actually a month old right now. So it's just, we don't waste lettuce. I've taught skills that I've learned from our neighbors and our grandparents, how to wash items and how to store it properly, and it just doesn't get thrown away. And it's so interesting that like the average family throws away 40% of the food that they're buying, and it's just this concept that I don't understand. Like I just don't, understand, like, oh, it's garbage day, we need to clean out the fridge. Like we don't do that. We eat the food until it's gone.
No, I can so relate to what you're saying, that when I read that about waste, I'm just shocked, because my parents never wasted anything. My mother made meals from scraps, and no one would know it was scraps, or no one would know that things were maybe getting a little close to their prime or past their prime, so to speak. And I'll tell you something cute that I remember one day my father was sitting here at my kitchen table having a cup of coffee, and the newspaper came, and it had a rubber band around it. And I threw the rubber band in the garbage. It was all dirty. And my father said, "What are you throwing out?" And he said, "Oh my goodness, Mary, my given name is Mary Louise, and so whenever I tell stories of my parents and my mother, they're always saying Mary Louise. And my father's like, "Mary Louise, what are you throwing out? I'll take that rubber band home with me. That's like something good that can be used." And he had all the little coffee cans in the garage with every little piece that you might need, and if something was broken, he would say, "Oh, I think I have something to fix that." Yeah. And my mom, she always had a very well-stocked pantry, a lot of homemade things, like you're saying that you take after your grandmother and do the home canning and all of that. And it's cute because I was my grandmother and my grandfather are from Italy, and then my mother was raised here in the United States. But my grandmother always had a garden. She had an apple tree. Nothing was wasted. Everything, was made homemade. And then my mother carried that over into when she got married with my father, and had a well-stocked pantry, making everything homemade, wasting nothing. And it's so funny because I remember very little I never remember food going into the garbage.
Right.
Whatever went into the garbage, I don't even remember the garbage can. It seemed like my parents made use of everything. It's funny because I think of, was there a big thing about taking the garbage out? I can't remember. And what's cute is we all lived on the same street, and my grandmother, my aunts, my parents, and at one point, this was very suburban. And at one point, my father said, I think we need to go live in the country. Now, living in the country meant simply moving from the southern part of the county where we lived to the northern part of the and getting a few acres, but it was very cute because I think both my parents had this like country heart.
Mhm.
I think their dream would have been to be like your family, to or we were talking earlier, about another gal who's got many generations, of ranching. You had many generations of a dairy farmer. I think that my parents had that heart to try to at least capture some sense of a country life, and have the feeling of, oh yes, I've been doing this all my life.
I kind of feel
And
like that right now. That
well, my father was so cute because we had the well and the septic and all of that. And I remember once the well got hit with lightning, and he's out there trying to fix the well, but he loved every minute of it. It's cute. But my mom, yeah, she was very good about keeping a very well stocked pantry. And I grew up in New York, and we could get blizzards and snowstorms and all of that. And she was so calm about everything, because she always was prepared. And I have to be very honest with you that as a young working woman before I got married, okay, I had groceries and whatnot, but I certainly wasn't prepared for if something like 2020 had
Mhm.
hit us. And then it's interesting because after I got married, then I started really thinking, and I got married a little later in life. I had my son when I was in my 40s. And it was funny because I would say, gee, I better make sure, but I live in Central Texas. It's always mild here.
Oh yeah,
And so
the ice
I don't
storms.
really, yeah, I don't really, yeah, exactly. And so it's mild, so we're going along. And then I am so grateful because this is going way back. There was some health incident like in another country. It wasn't here in the United States. And my husband just looked at me and he goes, gee, do we have enough like food and water? My son was a little boy, and we ripped everything out of the clothes, the what do you call, the hall closet, and we started putting in shelves. And he and I were so happy because I think we really had the prepper heart, and we started stocking up, and thank God, because by the time 2020 hit, and then I thank God I had food to get us through. Everybody was really afraid. You didn't know, what was going to happen. And then I learned a lot of lessons when the ice storm hit in 2021. You were talking about a generator. We had we thought we were so prepared. We had a little generator. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even run the coffee pot on it.
Oh no. We can
That's
run
so
half the house on
weird, And, and I think I even made a video where a while back, where I said, okay, this is what I learned, and this is now what I have, but and then 2022, well, we're going along, weather's great. 2023, another ice storm hits. This is like, what? What's going on here? I live in Central Texas between Austin and San Antonio. We don't get ice storms like this. But thank goodness, we were often paralyzed in both storms for about a week.
Mhm.
And, you made such a good point about young people. having gone through these times now, recognizing the importance of stocking food and storing it properly. But to your point, there are some things that store very easily.
Mhm.
But then what do you do about fresh fruits and vegetables? And your video about how to, not just one, you have many, you're talking about the lettuce, and I'd love to, hear more about that, and how you keep strawberries for like a month.
Yeah, these are a
This
month old right now.
this is really these tips are really helpful because it's not just about trying to preserve them based on what you bought at the grocery store. A lot of us have gardens.
Mhm.
And yes, we can ferment things. Yes, we can home can things. But how nice if we can take lettuce, and here we can pretty much, ice storms. I don't know what to think anymore now about gardening in Central Texas. But normally, are what you would consider winter months, we can garden. And that's usually when we can grow all these, what you would call like cold weather crops.
Mhm.
And if you get like a nice abundance of lettuce, how nice to be able to preserve it in a fresh state so that you can then make salads. Because, yeah, it's great. Soups are wonderful and stews and serving it, chopping it up as a side dish or whatever. But the idea of being able to make it, especially like if it's February here and it's hitting, it's so unpredictable now, but if it's 70 degrees, how nice that we can just have lettuce that we maybe grew through 3 weeks earlier and we put it in our fridge. So I'd love to hear more about how you do all of this.
Well, I grew up on the fifth generational farm, as I said, and it was my dad's side of the family. So the time I was born and remember, my grandma had passed away, and we lived with my grandpa, and we had two houses. There was like the big house and the little house next door. And my mom's family had grew up in town. And they always had a big city garden, and we have a garden here in town also, and chickens in our backyard. But when my grandpa passed away on my mom's side, my grandma ended up moving in at the other house. So I grew up with my grandpa and my grandma, but it was my mom's mom and my dad's dad. And, having farmers and canners, on both sides of the family, just it was really neat. And then the area that I grew up in is called Cooper's Corner. And Mrs. Cooper was 102, I think, when she passed away. And I was one of her caregivers for the last 15 years of her life when I was young and in high school and college, being able to help and spend time with her every day. And so, the things that I learned from my grandparents and then Mrs. Cooper, were, to preserve the harvest and, and not waste anything. And one of those things was learning how to wash produce. So Mrs. Cooper mostly had taught me how to use vinegar, which now I've learned, all the reasons why I use vinegar. But here in the United States, it's 5% distilled white vinegar is what you use. In some countries, it's called 4.5%, and that's totally fine. And then I've learned in some countries, it's just called white vinegar. So, but for here in the United States, the 7% is used for cleaning your showers and your laundry. It's not used for food. So if you're in the United States, make sure it's the 5%, not the 7%. So other countries, it's just safe for your produce. But that kills off mold spores, listeria, E. coli, other harmful pathogens. I don't know if you've heard, just this week, strawberries have been recalled again for hepatitis A. These simple things are helping protect your family. Lettuce and greens are one of the most recalled items, and you can actually bring it home and make it safe for your family to eat and not have to worry about recalls and different things. But I soak it in a large bowl with a quarter cup of distilled white vinegar, that's 5%, for only 2 minutes. And it's so important when you're washing your strawberries that you're setting that timer because it goes so quick. And there's been a lot of people that have copied me and wanting viral videos after I've done this. And they're saying to soak it for like 10 or 15 minutes. Like, you will ruin your berries. Like, don't do that. Like, two
You'll
minutes is
pickle them.
yeah, 2 minutes is all you need. And then I rinse them off and I lay them out to dry on the counter. And here in the Seattle area, it takes about 3 hours until they're bone dry. And then I put them in a glass jar with a lid and a paper towel. So these were purchased right before Memorial Day. I can't remember. I haven't went to the store since before Memorial Day. And tomorrow is our anniversary, which is the first day of summer. So,
Happy anniversary.
thank you. So it's been almost a month, for sure, since I got these. And then, but you lay them out to dry and make sure they're all the way dry and put them in the fridge. And I store everything. When I first started doing it, I was doing it in pickle jars. And then over the years, I've gotten bigger jars and different jars and all the things, but pickle jars is what I used to use, and canning jars in the fridge. But you can literally have strawberries that last 3 weeks. Blackberries and raspberries will last 2.5 to 3 weeks. Strawberries last that 3 to 4 week mark. Grapes will last 4 to 6 weeks, and blueberries last 6 to 8 weeks. I have some blueberries in the fridge right now that are 7 weeks old. They're from the last time I went grocery shopping, not this time, the time before. So, and I haven't been to the grocery store in 4 weeks right now. So, I mean, we have fresh produce. There's plenty of things to eat. And then learning how to store like different items. So like we have, oranges here that are fresh and they will, stay fresh longer. If you put them in the fridge, these oranges were probably picked in December and we're in June right now. And apples, you don't think about, apples are only harvested one time a year. And so those apples that you're getting at the grocery store most likely are a year old already when you're getting them from the grocery store. So when you're washing them and putting them away, you can, have food security with fresh produce too. And something people don't think about, but I actually store watermelon too. So watermelon's one that will last about 6 weeks after you bring it home. So if I go to the grocery store, I'll eat like the cantaloupe and pineapple and other things that are in season first. But that watermelon will last around 6 weeks. So like at the end of the summertime, I always get watermelon and it'll last until like mid-October. I actually carved one as a jack-o'-lantern one year. I think it was during the pandemic because I didn't want to go get pumpkins. But anyways, but the watermelon, if you keep it whole and you wash it when you bring it home, you can keep it in your pantry and it'll stay fresh for about 6 weeks. And then as I cut it, I put it in a jar in the refrigerator and it'll stay fresh for about 2 more weeks in a jar. But you just have to drain the juice off every couple days. And I get teased about this all the time because I do drain the juice on this one down the sink. I don't drink it because I am diabetic. So I need to eat the fruit in the whole form. So I did that on a video one time and I got blasted like, oh, you should be using that. And I'm like, well, technically I can't. But you can use the juice however you want. Just get it off the watermelon so it's not sitting on there. But
that is so fascinating because I have to tell you something about vinegar and about the white vinegar. During 2020, I had like it was maybe January, so nothing had happened. The virus had not materialized, and I had developed some problem on my left foot, and I don't know like what the medical way to describe this would be, but basically, we have all these like little capillaries or whatever in our feet, and I guess they circulate liquid, through our body. I'm like so not medical, but something happened with one where it was just like building up fluid and not like properly circulating. Not exactly sure, but in any event. So I had to go to actually a dermatologist, which was kind of funny. And they had to just make a little incision and like cauterize something, okay, and then stitch me back up. Well, I don't heal it. It doesn't heal very well. And the doctor said, oh, this can happen, things on feet, can sometimes not heal well. And I also made a mistake of keeping the bandage on too long. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Okay. Well, then the virus hits,
Hmm.
and she's not considered an essential medical person as a dermatologist, so she has to close her office. But I developed an infection. But she was so kind because I had her phone number and we were texting back and forth. And, back then it was even difficult, like to get to the drugstore, which was in the grocery store, and, all of that. She told me, take white vinegar, mix it with water, saturate a cloth, and put that on your foot twice a day for 10 minutes. And just let it sit there for 10 minutes and then, wash it with soap and water and then let it air dry. It healed.
See?
Can you believe it? So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on so long. I like drew that story out. But the point was, here a doctor this is a medical doctor telling me to use, in essence, vinegar. And I said, I can't believe this. This worked so beautifully. I wish like I had done it early on, after I had had the incision. And she explained just what you explained, that vinegar kills an assortment of different types of bacteria. And so that's just an excellent alternative, at least, that not you don't always want to have to rush to take antibiotics because
Right.
they get your gut health all screwy and then you got to
For
fix
2 years.
that. Yeah. And the simple vinegar and water. So it's amazing that you just 2 minutes and you're preserving something. And it's fascinating to me that even your watermelon, after you cut it and put it in the jar, lasted longer
Hmm.
than what most watermelon would last under normal circumstances. It's almost like just a short cleaning of the rind permeated enough, maybe, I don't
Well, it's
know.
that
It's
mindset too of just not
it's
knowing that you can, get fruit that's going to last longer and how to store it. And I didn't know, like I didn't grow up putting fruit in glass jars. My grandma used to put them in country crock containers, like on the plastic Tupperware everywhere. But we were foster parents before the pandemic, and when our littles came to live with us, they didn't really know produce, and there was 4 of them under 7, and so there was a lot of little hands like wanting things, and it was hard. One, we're an allergy family, so we didn't have all the packaged items and stuff that they were used to. And so it was kind of a culture shock a little bit to come and see whole foods, and we made cookies and stuff all the time. Like there was snacks and stuff. But when I open up my fridge, it's beautiful. And over the years, I had started putting things in glass because I was trying to remove the plastic out of my kitchen. I felt a need to do that. And when the littles like started pointing at, being able to say, I want this, but not knowing the name for that, and then eventually it's like, I want red or I want blue or, and then they started learning the names for the produce items that they wanted. But I really taught them how to eat a rainbow, every day, and snacks came straight from the fridge. And, and it's just so interesting to me that I ended up putting strawberries in a jar so they could see things better, and then realized that these washing techniques that I used, like now all of a sudden, not only were they clean, but they were lasting a lot longer. Like once I like mastered, the whole process of doing this. But I just believe it was just how God lined things up that, we felt for a while that our calling was to help, with these children. And then I ended up putting strawberries in a jar, and they're not here anymore. And, and here the strawberries in a jar hack has changed my life. And we're literally reaching like 1 million moms a month, and it's so incredible that like I've had this heart for generational change that I've been instilled from, Mrs. Cooper and my grandparents, and daily what I do with my husband's grandma, that I consider my grandma. But that those generational lessons that we're learning and, expanding on, and then now being able to teach to other younger moms, I just think is so amazing. And it's just everything to me to be able to do this, and to know that there is somebody that is wanting to learn, just as much as I like listening to your videos and learning from you, and gaining that knowledge that you have that you're passing on. I just truly value being a social media influencer, and it like breaking down all the norms of what that means, like really being able to educate others and give others hope. And, over the pandemic, it was such a scary time. I'm here in the Seattle area. We're within 30 minutes of where the first US cases were, like our grocery stores were the very first ones in the country to shut down. And we were the very last state to open back up afterwards. So like we were closed down for so long, and all you heard on the news and, different places was just all this negative stuff. And to be able to go and listen to your videos during that time, and it just being so peaceful and calming and giving you hope, and just knowing that it was okay to store these foods, and to store them safely. I have like the funniest story. So my husband's grandma is 94, and she fell in January, and she lives by herself. She's totally self-sufficient, all the things. Like she was driving at Christmas time. So this fall has it's kind of knocked her down a little bit. And so I've been there almost every single day since January to help her. And one of the things was being able to clean out her fridge when she was in the hospital. And in the last 10 years or so, she has gotten a new fridge. And so, I was, going through her fridge, and I've wanted to do it for a really long time. And I'm going through her fridge, and I'm finding these items because she is, a Depression era baby, and like that idea of just buying more, but nothing about food rotation at all. It just, what can you hoard with food? Like just that not being able to ever get it away and never having enough. And, I'm cleaning out her fridge, and there are these packages of chicken, like, those tinfoil kind of packages, or those foil packages of tuna fish.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they were like that, but they were of tuna, or of chicken, not tuna, in her fridge. And so I was like, okay, we'll see, and I'm looking at the date. Those chicken packages were from 1993. Like my husband and I were in high school 30 years ago and dating, and those packages have been in our fridge for 30 years. 30 years. She had chicken that was 30 years old in her fridge. And so I'm doing this in January, and I was teaching one of our classes at our high school, in one of the food science classes, and talking about this, whole subject and everything. And I was saying, like, there was mayonnaise in there from 2004, and there was, like all of these things, mayonnaise that she was eating, like you could tell that she had been eating it. And they're like, that's older than me. I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, it's so interesting. But like, I believe in having food security in our house, and I do inventory and rotate it. And, grandma just doesn't. Like, she just wants to have food security, but the food that she has at her house is unsafe to eat. And then still not being able to part with it. Like, this is not safe. You have plenty. There's other things here that, can replace this. But it's just been such a learning experience for me the last 6 months, being with her every day, and having this other, she was raised in the city. She wasn't raised, on a farm like me, like all these different culture shocks, kind of for both of us, and being able to gently help her let things go that are just not safe to have in our house anymore. And, I teach families. I have a grocery course, and I teach families and our local food bank. I have a course that I teach with our local food bank to help have food security in your house, but to how to rotate those items. And so you're not, just in that hoarding mindset, and not getting rotated and you're actually using it. So you're actually saving your family money, not just buying it to hide underneath the bed and never think about it again, and it just, it's just interesting, you know, 3 years ago, I might not have understood that
Mm.
mentality that grandma has.
That is so true. I think that the one of the most important things when you are putting together your pantry and thinking about food security is to remember to rotate food. There are some things that you can kind of keep as, your forever foods that you kind of know really don't expire or go bad. They may lose some nutrition over time, whatever the case may be. But for the most part, that is so important to kind of develop that mindset of first in, first out.
Mhm.
And I always tell people it's so important to know what you have and to try to do an inventory. And the initial inventory can sometimes be a little overwhelming if you've never done one before. And then you start finding these things, like you said, 20-year-old bags of, tuna fish or chicken, and so on and so forth. But I think that once you get into a habit of that, and that's kind of, I have these little inventory sheets that I made for what, I call, you probably have heard me say it, the Four Corners Pantry. The working pantry, your fridge, your freezer, and then your extended, or what we nickname, the prepper pantry. And I tell people there's no email required, nothing. Just print these out. Just start. And and my website's the same as my YouTube channel, Mary's Nest, just marysnest.com. And I say, I don't want this to be difficult for you. I feel like you, Amy. It's so important to me to teach this and to help people so that these habits are developed. Number one, of stocking your pantry, but also understanding first in, first out, and doing an inventory, knowing what we have, and preserving the skills of how to cook, how to make traditional foods, how not to waste. All of these things that I worry, I don't want this to be lost. And I think that you have such an important message that you share about, I'll often talk about, clean out the crisper when the veggies are getting a little past their prime, and we got to make a soup or do something with them. But I think that you have a really good message that a lot of us have been missing, in that we store our food best we can. We do the best we can with our fresh food. And then we try to clean out our crisper or clean out our fridge and make meals with these things where no one's even going to notice that the food was a little maybe past its prime, but it's still safe to eat, of
Right.
course. But knowing how to preserve, how to take food that's fresh and extend it, this is, and what I really like about what you share is that you're not saying, okay, you need a lot of fancy equipment
Mm-mm.
to preserve this. Yes, it's great to have all these different food saver devices or whatever. But I'll confess to you that sometimes I just want a really simple way to keep my food fresh. I don't want to bring out the big machine. I'm like maybe feeling a little lazy, or I'm a little tired, I'm well into my 60s now, and there are days when I'm like, gee, that chair in the kitchen looks really comfortable. I think I want to sit down, I just want to relax. But, and I don't really feel like bringing out a food saver or whatever the case may be. Or, and I laugh at myself because sometimes I'm like, okay, where did I put the jar attachment? And I got to
Oh
suck the
yeah, I can never find that either.
when we run, as you and I do, when we run these traditional foods kitchens, and we live, I'm not sure where your house is like, but I live in an old house, and I don't have a lot of space, and sometimes I'll like squirrel things away, and I'm like, I know I put that in an important place. Where did I put and I can't find it or whatever. And I love the idea of I always have white vinegar.
Mhm.
I have it in the bathroom. I have it under my kitchen sink. I
Make sure
always
it's a 5% if it's in
5%. Yes.
there.
And actually, you taught me something today. I use 5% everywhere.
Okay.
I use
Well,
it
that's
for
fine too.
cleaning.
Just don't do it the other way.
Right, exactly. It's funny. I always just because it's interesting because with canning, they always say even though sometimes the vinegars at the grocery store will say like canning and pickling, but the canning books will say 5%.
Mhm.
You don't need any schmancy type vinegar,
Right.
and I'll just buy the 5%. I have it in my bathroom. I have it in the garage. I have it in the under my sink in the kitchen. We use it. My husband has some. That's why we have some in the garage. My husband uses it to flush out the is it the air? Yeah, the air conditioning unit. I don't. He has to go up into the attic and he has to pour something in the pipes to maintain everything. I mean, it's like a miracle solution. And learning from you, uh, the I've washed vegetables before, and sometimes, maybe I was putting a little vinegar in the water. It was just willy nilly. I didn't have a system. And I love learning the system from you and the proper time frame because I do use the vinegar for making quick pickles.
Mhm.
And you are so right. If you leave strawberries in vinegar too long, they start to macerate just like they do if you had
Mhm.
sprinkled sugar on them.
Yep.
And that can be tasty and used in a particular way. I don't know, but it's not going to help the whole process. And so I think that you really narrowing this down and figuring out how to the right amount of time and then how to store it with the paper towel and the glass jar. Everything that you teach is like you said, we're preserving these skills that uh, we can always be learning, we can always be adding to our repertoire for how to preserve food in a bunch of different ways. I often talk about having multiple streams of food. You always hear like I don't know who, like different people on the radio. I don't know if it's like a
For
David
the
Ramsey or
income.
somebody like that. But these different financial gurus will talk about having multiple streams of income. And one day I was saying multiple streams of income. Okay, yeah, that'd be nice, but I need to have multiple streams of food because I'm always thinking of food security. And so I think that have knowing how to home can, knowing how to ferment, knowing how to dry food, all the different ways that we can preserve food and preserve them in relatively easy or simple ways that don't necessarily require us to make a big investment. Like, yes, would be great to freeze dry things, sure.
Right.
But I don't know about I don't have a freeze dryer. The price, oh my goodness, it's expensive. Now now I know that, people feel that over time, and I understand that they pays for
It's an
themselves.
investment.
An investment, yes. And as opposed to maybe buying freeze-dried foods or whatever the case may be. But eh, sometimes, especially during the times we're in now when money is very tight for many of us, that it's difficult to allocate money for expensive equipment. And sometimes it can even just be difficult to allocate. And I'm sure you can really relate to this, having children and having also been a foster parent. Sometimes there are a lot of expenses with children, and if you're looking at your budget, you have to allocate your money accordingly, for the things that are most important. And then being able to have ways to preserve food that make it very easy and very affordable is such a boon to the homemaker, and especially the young homemaker with children when money often is very tight. And so this is just a wonderful, I really feel this is a wonderful skill you're teaching, and how to preserve in one more way than what often many of us think of as sort of the routine traditional ways that we've been doing, for many years with fermentation and canning. Now we can keep food fresh and for a fairly long time. And that's really nice if you only have to go to the grocery store once a month, or if you can't get to the grocery
Right.
store but maybe you've got a garden. So these are really important things, and I really like that we're trying. And it's not just you and me. I think there's a whole social circle of uh, men and women on YouTube who are. We feel very passionate about this. We feel very passionate about wanting to keep traditional skills alive. You and I focus very much to the traditional cooking skills and preservation skills in the kitchen. And that really is, it sounds a little corny because I know people use the expression a lot, but the kitchen's the heart of the home. And feeding people is very important. And feeding people nutritiously but also deliciously and of course safely. We never want to have anybody become ill because of our cooking. That would be horrible. But it's not just about nutrition, it's also about making things appealing to the eye. And when food looks fresh, it's very appealing to the eye and it's very tasty. It's juicy, especially in the case of the strawberries, or crisp, as you shared in the case of the lettuce. This is just it's just a wonderful way to, my husband will often say to me, "Oh, you really, the way I show love, me, Mary," he'll say to me, you really show love through the food preparation and you really like to feed people." And I do. And it's sort of funny because we're a small family. It's the two of us, and then we have our one son. And it's funny because, especially with my Italian heritage, and my husband has learned the word abbondanza, meaning abundant. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you cook abbondanza." And there's like three people, and I'm like, "Oh honey, are there like 25 people coming over?" But it's really the way we show love. And so it's not only for our families, but then we expand it and we want to show love and feed other people, feed our friends, feed our neighbors. And then we want to teach these skills so that other people can show love to their family by keeping these wonderful traditional skills alive, as well as, new skills. And I'm sure there were ways that traditional cultures had in keeping food fresh, but what an easy modern way you share with some vinegar. I mean, some vinegar. I mean, it's
Right.
just it's wonderful. It's so simple and it's so quick. And now, whenever I come home, with you were mentioning blackberries earlier, I had gotten some blackberries on sale at our local grocery store, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to keep these fresh." I know Amy taught me.
You don't have to go in the freezer. You can actually keep them fresh. I get like it seems like it's daunting. Like when you
Mhm.
go to the grocery store and then you have to like wash everything and put it away, and then I get people that say, "Oh, I don't have time for that." It normally to do a whole like 3 weeks worth of groceries, no matter if our family size was bigger or now that it's smaller. It takes about 30 minutes for me to wash everything and lay it out. And then I go rest or I go do something else while it's laying there drying. And then it only takes like 10 minutes to put everything in the glass jars and put it away in the refrigerator. So
Mhm.
45-ish minutes once a month or once every 3 weeks to have fresh produce the whole entire time. Like, but we don't even think about how often we used to go to the grocery store. Can you stop and pick up this? Can you do this? Like all of those minutes of stopping and doing that, all of the time we realized was just a time suck for us. But, we spend right now with the inflation, it used to be $100 per person in our family. And now we do $135 per person in our family once a month for our grocery budget. And that's eating organic, as natural as I can get, all of the things. And, you know, not having to go into the grocery store to get an avocado that's going to expire in 2 or 3 days. Well, I can teach you how to keep an avocado fresh for a month. I have avocados that are fresh in my refrigerator that are a month old, and not having to go and grab that one or two things that ends up being a whole cart full of things because you saw something on sale and the kids want something, all of those different money saving tips happen when you can spread out those grocery shopping trips. And, it doesn't have to be for 3 weeks. If you can get through a whole week without going to the grocery store, you've drastically helped your family's budget.
That is so true. That is so true because occasionally, when we usually will shop once a week, maybe sometimes every other week. But if we just pop in, if we just say, my husband and I are out, and we say, oh, maybe we just need X, Y, and Z. Oh my gosh, the cart's full. We just see all these things and we're like, oh yeah, okay, maybe we need some of this and some of that. Staying out of the grocery store is the key to saving money. And if you can get to the point where you only have to shop once a month, I think the budget that you've set is actually very doable. Because yes, and you had to increase a little, with inflation, the prices definitely are higher lately in the grocery store than they were at a few years ago. But that's still a really good budget. And I definitely feel the more that you can not be making these short little trips into the grocery store, the more money you're going to save in the long run. Because there are a lot of things that can be very difficult to not be tempted by different grocery specials. And you might say, oh, well, I maybe I need that. Maybe I can use that, whatever. And I have found that over the years, becoming more aware of what I'm bringing into my kitchen and using it up and keeping track of what I've got, I've saved so much money. I mean, and then if I can even stretch those trips out farther, I'm going to save even more. And looking at everything, and I'm sure that you do this, especially being, you said you have the gluten-free household, and I'd be interested in hearing more about that. Uh, that you, when you have food and it looks fresh and appetizing, and then you pull that out and you make meals, you use it up over the course of the month, you feel very rewarded that very little went into the garbage, very little had to be turned into, as I said, clean out the crisper meals. And you develop this habit. And like 45 minutes to prep food for a month, fresh food for a month, that's really not a lot of time. I mean, think of how much time being a home canner yourself, you know how much time it takes to home can. I mean, that's a day. That's an event.
It
When
is. And then a rest day afterwards.
Yes, yes, right. I remember one time I was turning a bunch of citrus. So you were showing your citrus before I was turning. I had like got a buy on citrus, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I gotta use all this up, and I don't want to waste any." And I was making marmalade, and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I'm like sweating, and I'm like getting hair out of my face, and I'm like still putting the jars in, and I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted, you know. But it's so important. The less we can go into the grocery store, the better. There's just no bones about it. You're going to save money because it is very difficult, at least for me, and maybe there are others out there who feel the way I do, the temptation of the bargains once you get in, and not necessarily bargains that you need, but the temptation to not, take in Central Texas we have HEB, and
Oh, yeah.
they have really good buys, and they put these little yellow coupons, and they say, oh, buy $30 worth of this and get $5 off your basket. And you're like, oh, wow, I got to take advantage of that. So the less I go into the grocery store, the more money I save.
It's interesting going from like having a larger family at home just, a couple of years ago to now it's just my husband and I, that transition of like not overcooking and not wasting like leftovers and different things. I have reflective sympathetic dystrophy. And so it's like a pain syndrome, kind of like fibromyalgia. So I have good weeks and I have bad weeks, and I can have a, good day and a harder day, all those kind of things. And a lot of the skills that I've learned over the years to batch cook and put meals in the freezer and different things are because I never know when I'm going to have a great day or not. And to be able to pull those meals like right out of the freezer is just so, it's crucial for us. But you like, people that don't batch cook or don't prepare meals at home, they don't realize how easy it is. Like when you're making dinner and you can just, divide it up and put two more portions in the freezer and have two more dinners worth, it's still the same pan. Like you didn't worry about having to mess up the kitchen multiple days. You're just putting it in the freezer for another night instead of it going into the refrigerator for wishful thinking, that somebody's going to eat it, like you can easily plan ahead and make meals and get them in the freezer so you can pull them back out. And that is one of the things that has really saved us with going from having a larger family to now the two of us is like, yeah, I still cook, 6 chicken breasts at a time, but we're going to eat the 2 and the other 4 I have a plan for, and thinking ahead instead of just hoping people show up,
That is so true. Batch cooking is such a lifesaver. And I'll make like a big pot of a bolognese, and then I will divide it into threes.
Mhm.
And we'll have the bolognese with some spaghetti or whatever I'm serving. And then I love knowing I have those 2 batches in my freezer. And then, especially now with our son being home, he really enjoys that. And knowing I can just pull that out at a minute's notice when, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to make for dinner? Or I just got out of my routine, or I forgot to defrost something, or whatever the case may be. Even with certain things that are frozen, it's really easy to reheat them when they've already been prepared.
All the
And
love's already in it.
yeah, and I love the idea of like cooking the chicken. I could roast a chicken every day. I love roast chicken. And I just find it so easy because, I can just pop it in the oven. And I'll often just roast 2 chickens, and then I'll serve one for dinner, and then what's ever left over, we'll have that the next day, sort of reincarnated, so to speak, into something different, they're tacos or soup, whatever. And then I've got the carcass, make
For the
bone,
bone broth, yeah.
right? But I love having that other chicken. And then I'll take all the meat off of that, and then I will freeze it in different containers. And then whenever I think, oh, gee, what am I going to make tonight? And I said, oh, I've got cooked chicken in the freezer, and I can take a batch out. I can do chicken tacos or whatever I feel like doing. That is a really wonderful skill. So between saving, learning how to preserve fresh food so that it stays longer in your refrigerator, learning how to batch cook so that you have, and then freezer meals, whatever people
Mhm.
call it. So batch cook freezer meals, and you've got that. Now you're really getting into a system, because people will often ask me, and I'm sure you get this as well, and having a bigger family than me, people will say, what's the rhythm like? How do you get into this where you're making real food, you're making real meals, but oh, the work and this and that. And I always say, just start with a roast chicken. It's not complicated. It's easy to do. And then you're going to have a lot of leftovers that you can serve the next day. You can freeze some. And then you're slowly gathering up. I
Mhm.
usually like to make a bone broth with 3 chicken carcass, but
Yep.
you can certainly just do 1, and you're starting to gather up your carcass, and then you can make bone broth, and then if you, start preserving food to keep it fresh in the refrigerator like you teach, you pull a few things out, like you said, you've got your lettuce, it's fresh, it's crisp, you don't need to worry that it's gone bad, so you've got a roast chicken, you've got a salad now, you can maybe make some biscuits if you do dessert, and you've got some fresh strawberries, and you can do a little strawberry shortcake or whatever. And it's this whole developing this whole rhythm
Right.
of knowing how to preserve food, and regardless of what type, even we often think when we think of preserve, we think of ways that we're preserving it for a longer period of time. But now we're adding to this system preserving and extending the life of fresh food. And so this gives you more meal options. And like you said, you're not running out at the last minute. I just, the thought of trying to make dinner and then suddenly say, oh, I don't have X, Y, or Z. I don't want to run to the grocery store for a lot of reasons. I don't want to spend extra money, but I also don't want to drive over there, and if there's traffic or whatever the case may be, I don't want to, and crowds, I don't want to have to deal with that. So being able to pull these things out of my fridge and have what I need and make a meal. And often what's nice is it doesn't even really have to be specific to a recipe. It's whatever you've managed to keep fresh over this period of time that you've washed with the vinegar and that is still doing nice in your refrigerator. And people often laugh at me and they're like, "Oh, Mary, what's the recipe?" And I'm like, "Well, you could do this, but if you don't have that, use this. If you don't have that," they're like, "Mary, why do you even have the recipe?" Like,
Oh, writing a recipe for the blog is so hard
yeah, I
because I'm like, I didn't know it was this much.
I, it's so funny when I was approached to write my cookbook, the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, that comes out in August. It was funny because I was like, "Oh, recipes? Um, okay.
Measurements.
Measurements? Oh, okay." Yeah, and I had to really work through everything, but it was very cute because my editor was really adorable, and it's a man, and he said to me, "I've never worked on a cookbook like this before. It's very interesting. It's more like a manual, more
Yes,
like how to do this, how to do that." He goes, "This is really interesting. I'm really enjoying this." And it
I
was cute
love that.
because someone who didn't know me asked me, "Oh, could you?" I don't know if they asked if it was in the cookbook or if they were asking me if it was on my website. I can't remember, but it had something to do with Super Bowl snacks.
Mhm.
And I was like, uh, "Have you seen my YouTube channel?" And they're like, "No way." I'm like, "I don't really do Super Bowl snacks and stuff. I'm sort of teaching how to render animal fats." I get nervous, when people say, "Oh, do you have a recipe for this?" I'm like, "Oh, I have very basic traditional foods, and I often don't get like the most involved I'll get will be like making jalapeno poppers." Okay, hope that is good for the Super Bowl. But it's, I just make these very traditional things, and that's what I really love about being able to keep fresh food fresh, because I like to, I've always been kind of a fan of people who write cookbooks like Alice Waters, where
Mhm.
it's just taking fresh food and just presenting it or preparing it in a very simple way to maximize its freshness that people can enjoy and can eat. I don't tend to do recipes that really involve a lot of ingredients and a lot of, because I also don't want to have those ingredients and that they
Right.
may go to waste. Or, like you said, you look in your pantry and like, oh, gee, this is 10 years old. You know what? I bought it and I opened it and then I never, used it again for a particular recipe. But I like the idea of having nice fresh food, presenting it, with maybe a little dressing of some olive oil and a couple of herbs, or and allowing the flavors of the fresh food to really shine, to let them be the star of the show. And then in colder months, where maybe you are doing a soup or a stew, even at during those times, if you can do something that really lets the food shine and isn't necessarily where you're just sort of cleaning out the fridge, but you can have. I love to do a soup where I'm putting in fresh vegetables that when you serve it, they still have crispness to them.
Right.
They
Yeah.
still have that garden fresh feel or taste. And I love that. And so being able to extend them in the way that you share it's just so helpful. It really opens up a whole new realm of recipe preparation and meal preparation, recipe making and meal preparation, because you now have more options available to you, uh, as well as because you didn't have to go grocery shopping as often. So you've got the fresh lettuce, or you've got the fresh fruit, and I I love what you're saying about avocados because. Uh, how many times have you bought an avocado and you don't even, I'll put it in the refrigerator because I'm so terrified to leave it on the counter because it's going to be brown the next day. And well, you're going to go to squeeze it and it's going to be soft. And so learning how to all these little tips and tricks that you share, it's really eye-opening and just so helpful.
So for the avocados, if you store them in the fridge next to a lemon, they will stay fresher longer. They're produce buddies, and they keep each other fresh longer. So it's just really funny. Like these skills that I've learned. We have a plant major in college, and so she's like, "Mom, it's not this, it's that. Like it's not mom magic. It's the vascular system of the plant does." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, I don't know. It just works. But it's neat that she's able to like now research the things that I just thought looked pretty in the fridge. And now we're like, oh, it's this and this, make that. But I wanted to get back to your cookbook because I want to show you this cookbook that I have first, but then I am so excited to talk about yours. But my husband's grandma, she is 94. Last year for my birthday, she gave me this cookbook, and it's like falling apart, and it like has all these handwritten recipes in it that I honestly, they're really hard to read. I can read cursive, all the things, but they're really hard to read. And if she wouldn't have told me when she gave it to me, see, it's all falling apart. I'm so careful with it, but I didn't know. My grandma is 94. This was actually her mother's cookbook. So this cookbook is like 100 years old. And it's just so neat. But I'm scared to use it. I'm scared to open it. I don't want to have, liquids next to it. I don't want to get my fingers dirty and be changing pages. Like, yes, I do want to make recipes out of it, but I honestly just want to protect it so much. It's such a treasure. And I just love that you are releasing a cookbook that you've been working on. It'll be available August 15th, right?
That's right.
That I won't be scared to turn the pages on, and it will have the same Depression era, just special recipes in it. And I'm so excited to hear some of your recipes that you're going to have in the cookbook if you want to share a little bit more.
Well, I am just so impressed with that family heirloom that you have. That is really something to treasure. I can understand you wanting to be so careful with it. What a gem of something. I wonder if, sometimes they make this like a little off topic, but I think they make boxes
Yeah.
that are made to like pull out, I don't know if it's like moisture or things that can make pages degrade or something. And maybe like they sell them sometimes at hobby shops or whatnot. Uh, that might be something to keep that in. That is
It's
really
it's
a
kind of funny because it's one of the only things I keep in a Ziploc bag in my kitchen.
treasure.
But I do keep it in a Ziploc bag because I'm so afraid of
I don't,
anything and
I don't,
just the moisture in the air and different
yeah.
things.
Oh, I don't blame.
But and I have taken some pictures of some of the pages, just so I can preserve them that way
Preserve
because some of them the handwriting is older. But this is something that if we would have been cleaning out grandma's house someday later, I would have never known this was her mother's.
it.
And the fact that she was able to pass this down to me, I would have just assumed it was her handwriting. And to be able to know that this was her mother's handwriting in these books and her
That's
mother's,
beautiful.
recipes, from the early 1900s, to have this. And it's just a treasure.
It really is.
And I can't wait to make more recipes in it. And I do love that, well, kind of on two sides of my family, but I do love that my like pantry looks a lot like what my great grandma would recognize. But my great grandma was actually cousins with Laurel Ingalls Wilder.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So
That
on
is
both sides of
really
my family, like we
impressive.
have like some fun, family history.
Mhm.
But yeah, Mary in the Big Woods is my grandmother, my great grandmother Mary. And then
Oh
my
my
mom was named
goodness.
after my great grandmother. So my mom's name is actually Mary also.
Oh my
But yeah,
goodness.
so she was cousins with Laura and
Oh my goodness. That
everybody's
is really, that is just such a beautiful story. I love that. I love that.
So I love the fact of like modern pioneering that we're changing some things, but they're still the old techniques. For us, we're changing things to make them more allergy friendly, for recipes and stuff
I
to,
understand.
match with our needs of our families. But to be able to break down those basic recipes. And the one thing when I was looking through the Amazon to look at your book, because I was so excited I wanted to order it and I didn't realize it wasn't out for a couple more weeks. And but I was looking and you were talking about making graham crackers and I was like, oh, finding graham crackers that are allergy friendly are like so hard to do it. And so I'm really excited about that. And then I had just been on a podcast with Lisa Bass from Farmhouse on Boone, and she was talking about making marshmallows. And I'm like, okay, now who's making chocolate? Like,
Oh, so silly.
we need
Oh,
the graham crackers here and go find the marshmallows here. And so now we
oh
just need
my
some
God.
chocolate. But it would
Yeah,
be just fun.
it's so true. I really, I love the fact that we have the modern conveniences available to us, but I really prefer when it comes to running a kitchen to run it like a traditional foods kitchen, that we are preserving the skills that our moms and our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, depending on our ages, whatever the case may be, the way these traditional foods were made by traditional cultures for centuries, and they nurtured us and created good health and also didn't waste. These were all very important things. And it's funny because this was all second nature to me growing up with my parents. And then when I was a new mother and I was an older mom, but my social circle was younger mothers and their babies. And Sally Fallon's book had come out, Nourishing Traditions.
Mhm.
And my social circle of ladies said, "You know how to make all this stuff, don't you?" And I said, "Well, for the most part, like I had mentioned earlier, kefir was something I wasn't familiar with."
Mhm.
But I said, "Oh, yeah, I pretty much know how to make all this stuff." And so they were like, "You need to teach us." And so I was so happy. And so on Saturday mornings, all the ladies would come to my kitchen and they would have their nursing babies. The fathers would take care of the older kids. And we would just start, we'd do bone broth and ferments and sourdough starter and sourdough and soaking in sprouting grains and making, a lot of people were interested in knowing how to make sprouted breads and things
Mhm.
like that. And we just had so much fun doing that. And then I would like go to other ladies' houses, they'd have me over, and it was very cute. And when my son went to college, uh, he and my husband said, "Gee, you should put your cooking classes on YouTube." Because I was thinking I would do what, like have it on a website.
Mhm.
And my husband and son said, "You can do YouTube. You can, just film this and make these classes available. You can reach a much broader audience." And that really made me happy because the thought of being able to teach these skills to more and more people and keep these skills alive, it's just become such a mission, so to speak, so important to me. And then it was cute because a editor at Random House was looking for how to make sauerkraut, and he saw my video and he thought, "Gee, this is very interesting. Maybe this gal, could write a book for us." And it's for their DK imprint. And as a homeschool mom, I used many a DK book, and so it really touched my heart because they look so pretty. They do such a nice job. And so uh, they contacted me, and I said, "Oh, that would be great." And it was cute because the gentleman said, "Oh, what do you want to, where I was saying, like, oh, what should I include?" And they were like, "Oh, just like what you do on your YouTube channel, all these traditional recipes and whatnot." And I was like, "Okay," and I just start with how to stock a traditional foods pantry. And then I move to bone broth and rendering animal fats and culturing dairy, different types of dairy, also making, and I try to do things in a way to really help people who are on this type of journey.
Mhm.
I often say transitioning from a processed foods kitchen to a traditional foods kitchen. And so each chapter, I try to make things very easy. I show how to not only culture dairy, which can sometimes be a little intimidating, kind of a new skill to learn, but I also show how to make easy things like stovetop cheeses. And then with the bread, I start with a quick bread, and then I move to a sandwich bread. And then I'm like, "Okay, you've developed some skills now. We're going to try sourdough starter, and then we're going to make sourdough bread." And I just take them on this journey through the whole book, little by little, trying to develop these traditional food skills. And then at the end, I show how to take some of the things you've learned how to make, and then make foods with them, make meals that you can serve your family and friends. And of course, yes, there had to be some sweet treats like graham crackers and a few other things, to how to make these things homemade. But it was really it was a wonderful experience. It was a wonderful journey. When you get the book and you get to go through it, the editor came to my home with a photographer and a food stylist, and I'm actually making the food. And then they're putting it on my kitchen table. You're going to see a lot of pictures of my kitchen. And they're putting it on the kitchen table, and they're taking the food stylist. They do it nice. I don't really have that skill, and I am so impressed with it. Where people know how to put something very nice with like a little um, like a nice tea towel and
Right.
a knife and a cutting board and do things like that. And one thing that I absolutely thought was so cute was these people who are who do this food styling for a living. They're amazing. She even, I think the chapter where on dairy, I in that chapter is where I show, how to make butter and then clarify it. And she actually has some of the clarified butter on a spoon with like one little drop coming off.
Dripping.
The pictures are fantastic.
I can't wait to see it.
I was so impressed with how they could do everything. But there was a lot of fun. It was quite an experience. And it was cute because I would say to the editor, "Okay, give me a heads up on what pictures you're going to take," because sometimes, early in the week I would be getting ferments going so that they would look just so,
Right.
to be photographed. Or I remember one time I was up like 2 o'clock in the morning making sourdough bread because I was like, I gotta have this ready for them. So it was an interesting experience. But what really is just, I just feel so blessed to have been able to do this because being able to preserve this in a format
Mhm.
that
Somebody's great granddaughter might really cherish someday.
right, maybe you never know, something you can put on your shelf,
Mhm.
something that, no matter what happens in life, no matter what happens with the internet and videos and so on and so forth, something that, like your great grandmother's cookbook, something that is tangible, something that we can have on our bookshelf, that we can pull off our bookshelf, have as a reference. I really hope that this is a manual to help people on their journey of creating a traditional foods kitchen, because we got to preserve this stuff. We can't just be relying on prepared, or my mother always called like packaged foods, like,
Mhm.
processed foods. She'd always call them prepared foods. She's like, we can't rely on prepared foods at the grocery store. We have to know how to make them ourselves. So I think it's very important. And
I
it's so
have an ebook called I Bought It Now What, and it's available on the crosslegacy.com, but also on Amazon. And so I'm like a bestseller on Amazon, and it's kind of fun. But it teaches the top 50 produce items and how I keep them fresh for weeks. And, but to
fantastic.
have it as a book, like I want it as a book so bad. It's an ebook, and if you buy it from the website, then you can print it off. But to find that publisher that really sees your heart and what you want to do with this, and we're just praying that we find the right one and the right connection, and be able to do this. I would love to see like the book in print in a Costco or bookstore or something at some point, that people really can have it, on their countertops and being able to reference it. And it's such a huge a goal of mine, but it is really neat to say that I'm like officially a best-selling author because
I
it's on
love
the
it. I love it.
Amazon
Oh, I love
best-selling list.
that. Oh, I will keep you in my prayers because that's a wonderful a book that you have that really teaches valuable skills.
So, and nice that mine is under like gardening and fruit. So we're not even competing authors either because it's not even listed under cookbooks.
Oh my goodness.
So it's just kind of fun.
Oh,
But
but you know what? I am a firm believer, and I always see this. I always not see this. I always say this, that a rising tide, as they say, raises all ships. And I love to
absolutely.
see success across the board. It makes me so happy. I love the social circle, and I'm so glad to know you now. I love the social circle of traditional foods cooks that we've created here on YouTube, and I encourage, so many people, and of your viewers. I encourage you, if this is a passion that you have, and you have traditional cooking skills, share them in any way that you can. Share them, on the local level, or share them on a national or an international level through social media, whatever platform you're comfortable with. I tend to really lean to YouTube. I find YouTube uh, so straightforward, because you make a video, upload it, you get comments, you can answer comments, you can help people. It really is like, it's the modern day, online classes, so to
Right.
speak, for the type of things that we teach. So yeah, I always encourage people, and some of my friends who have come on board YouTube, who right now, have smaller channels. I try to share a lot of information about them in my videos and on my community page on YouTube, because this is very important. These are skills, they can't be lost. We need to have young people especially learn how to run a traditional foods kitchen, how to cook. It's sort of cute. My son gets such a tickle out of this because he would say, "Oh, Mom, you'd always show me how to roast a chicken because you'd say if you know how to roast a chicken, you'll never go hungry."
Right.
And,
I love that.
and I think that this is very important, and so I'm always trying to encourage people that there are more and more uh, viewers coming on YouTube. I mean, you hear this constantly, billions of people and are watching videos, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, there's a lot of people already on YouTube," and I always say, "No, there are people who are looking to connect with you, and they
Mhm.
just haven't found you yet." And when they find you and they like your particular teaching method or the recipes or the methods that you're sharing, uh, you're opening up a whole new world for them. How many people, I'm sure that you've experienced this um, with your Instagram presence as well as your YouTube presence. How many people have said, "Thank you so much for teaching me these things. I never learned these things." And
There's
when I,
so
right?
there's so many people. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I
no,
have a
that's
little bit of
fine.
scroll brain. But there's so many people every day that I stopped buying produce for my family because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford throwing it away. Like the idea that they just think of buying groceries as throwing it away instead of actually feeding their families. Like their kids, to know that households are eating better because I shared a picture of my refrigerator that went viral. The 18 million people have now learned this hack, and sharing it with others, and it's just amazing. Like my YouTube channel's smaller, but on Instagram, we're reaching, like almost a million people a month. Like that's crazy. Once a reel goes and it gets shared, like your reach, and here on YouTube, you're reaching a million people a month. Like I just, if I can make the difference in one family's lives, in one child's life, in one mom's life, if I can help, bring hope back to the kitchen, is something that we talk about a lot here, that, the kitchen for so long has been such a stressful place. Like my generation, the millennial generation, like it's just stressful. It's, can I afford groceries and what's for dinner, and not having those skills to be able to plan a little bit ahead. Like it's these skills that are lost
Yeah.
that we do need to take from the older generations and learn how to update them and make them, what we need. For me, it's always for allergies, so to update, recipes and things to make sure that they're safe for our family to eat, and just that heart and that calling that we want to reach out to other moms and other women and other families, and for me, it's how God's using me, and
Oh, it's
and I'm so blessed to be able to do this, and that people are finding encouragement, and I'm so just blessed to get to meet amazing people like you, and
oh, so
have conversations like this, that it feels like we've known each other for years, and you've been in my kitchen for years, as I'm prepping things and doing things. I just have your videos playing, but it's just been an honor. I don't want to meet celebrities. I don't want to meet, actors and actresses. I want to meet people like you that are really changing families' lives. And it's just such an honor. And I can't even express it more than that, that
oh, I
I
feel the
so
same.
believe in what you're doing.
Oh, I feel the same way about you. I find such joy when I meet people with whom share this passion, for preserving these traditional food skills. And I remember one time I have a friend here on YouTube, where a little social circle of two ladies, Michelle, you may know her, Michelle over at Chocolate Box Cottage, and Jackie over at Little Country Cabin. And it was cute. Michelle I've known for years, but one day I was just watching videos on YouTube, the things that are kind of surfaced on your homepage. And this video came up of this lady. And I'm always drawn, to like videos of women and they're talking about, old-fashioned things. And I clicked on the video and she was so sweet and she was talking in just a small new channel and she was talking about nourishing traditions. And I said, okay, this is my soulmate. And I left her a comment, and I said, oh my gosh, you had me at nourishing traditions.
If you don't have that big yellow book in your kitchen, then
Yeah, but I mean, it's such a joy for me, to meet people like you and to meet people like those other ladies. I love it. It brings me so much joy to know that our circle is growing because when I first started talking about this, to these other moms, years ago, we were kind of like fringe, this was not mainstream. And now I feel over the years, this has really become a way of living, a way of doing things, and I laughed, and I don't know if it was maybe 10 years or so ago, and I saw the Williams Sonoma kitchen store catalog, and in it they were selling stuff, but it's like cute because it's like fancy and kind of like a little shishi, but I thought it was so cute because they were showing things that you could buy to make ferments. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's gone mainstream. This is so cute. But it doesn't, it's just been such a joy to know you. And I'm so happy that, we can be friends and here, not just on YouTube, but hopefully in life and just continue to get to know each other better and share more tips about traditional cooking and and help in the process of sharing, teaching others as well and preserving these skills. It's a real joy, and it's been just such a joy chatting with you today and getting to know you better.
it's been so much fun. I really just feel like I've sat here and had coffee with a good friend, and it's just been so fun, and I can't wait to see how we can share audiences and people that want to learn more about fermenting and making wholesome nutritional meals will come and follow you through me, and people that are trying to save money on groceries by keeping their produce fresh longer will switch around, and we can just help
Definitely.
grow people's budgets and what they have available for their families, and that we can help families eat better.
Exactly. Eating better, saving money, not wasting. I mean, these are all the things that uh, have become so important, and I think very much at the forefront of people's ways of thinking now. And so the fact that there are people like us in this social circle, in social media, really trying to help people who are new to these concepts embrace them. And, I often say it's almost becomes like a little bit of a game. You look at everything and you say, okay, how can I use this? I'm not putting it in the garbage. I'm making
Right.
a deal with this. Yeah,
I do that like a week before I go to the grocery store. What can I use up before we really need to go to the grocery store? So,
well, I want to thank you so much for chatting today and letting me get to know you better. It's really been delightful.
this has truly been an honor. We will say goodbye now and just make sure that you're following both of us at Mary's Nest and the Cross Legacy. I am on YouTube and on Instagram under that same name and .com, and I'm Mary's in both places too. And just we will put all the different links and descriptions in the description notes, the show notes for this YouTube podcast, YouTube, whatever we were going to call this. So, really, it's a podcast kind of thing, but all the notes will be there at the bottom so you can follow the links, and make sure that you check out Mary's new book that is on pre-order right now through Amazon, and it'll be arriving in August. So again, thank you for listening, and we will be chatting soon.
Bye bye.